For me, what we're speaking of is this fundamental well-being, is our qualities of what's intrinsically here or our true nature. Just if we can all, like, how do we relate to what he's saying? There's an interest in more of that. Perhaps it's more abiding as this causeless okayness, this connectedness, this unity, this peace. And then Anton is also describing that he said, powerful protectors. And protectors are just the idea of, we label things as parts in this work, but it's really just thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Anything that can, at one stage in this journey, they can obscure the sky. It's like the weather can obscure the sky. And so what distracts you? What obscures you from the ever-present peace and okayness that you are? When he says protectors, can you sense that those voices that you hear, the sensations that you hear, are here to protect something? In my work, one of the premises is that everything that arises has a good intention. In classic IFS, we say there are no bad parts. Everything has a good intention. All of these protectors, even the ones that say, you bastard, you screwed up, you're a loser, you're a mess, you're doing it wrong. Like, if we listen deeply enough, we can hear there's a good intention there. Because part of the game is to kind of relieve the burden on these aspects of us, that those protectors that are like so careful for us, that they can find, that they can relax some. Since that home is here. And how does that translate for you? Home is here. Thanks, Anton. Nice that you're back with us. Is it Fleming?
It's Fleming. I'm from Denmark, where it's a first name. So yeah, you can call me Fleming. Good to be here. It's my first time. I picked this meeting a little bit randomly, but lovely to see at least one face I know well, Brother G. Well, I read a little bit about it before, and I'm intrigued, and I like what's going on. So hello.
Welcome, Fleming, as you randomly appear in our gathering today. And as you hear Anton share, and as you read a little bit, and as you're part of the POK, and then as a sense of, and then as far as what's most alive in you, to say like, hey, let's go to a group today. Oh, the Sid's got one going on. We'll go to that one. What's of interest? What would be meaningful for you as just what's the edge of the journey right now in Fleming's sense of coming home, of peace, of abiding, as self-realization? What's up?
Well, right now I'm a little bit sort of trying to avoid doing any sort of programs or anything, meaning more sort of resting in, okay, what's just there when I'm there by myself kind of thing. Like I did the 45-day course not too long ago. I finished a couple of months ago kind of thing, and where you intensively did things every day. And I like just what I find if I'm by myself, just sort of observing reality. And then that's almost a sort of logical thing for me, being present, like I'm here. Obviously, this is sort of what's going on. I don't know what I am really or where I come from, but these things are here, and from that I can sort of conclude something about existence. And I suppose I'm very good at sort of staying in a well-being sort of place. But what sort of piqued me about reading a little bit about this before is like, I might very well regard some parts of myself or some parts of my experience as sort of, oh, I just need to sort of get over that, or that's not the real me kind of thing, or well, there are some little things I need to do, or that are a little sort of annoying and stressful. So I'm intrigued about the perspective of sort of welcoming all of it. I mean, that there's like nothing that's like not me, of course, kind of, or none of it is me. It's all just sort of something happening here, including the little things that are sort of human annoyances of like the lawnmower is not working right. So do I need to take it apart and fix it, or do I buy a new one, kind of thing? Um, and I'm very good at having very sort of minimal amount of those things. I've arranged my humanness so that it's rather rather smooth, but it's in a little bit sort of faking it by just having a life that's easy.
Nice. Let me just, I'd like to just interject something for everyone. What are you getting from Fleming as he shares this? What if Fleming, like this is my first time to meet Fleming, but what if Fleming is, I don't know if you guys know this, but he's been leading, he's got these core presentations that he's going to be leading for the POK community, and everybody's excited about him. He's supposedly one of the kind of great sages of our day. What if that was true with what he just said? It's like just not to miss the gem and the depth in what Fleming's been sharing with us. The sense of, hey, I've kind of done my work. I just did the 45 days, and now it's just about resting here, being here, and noticing what's here. And yes, there's
Yeah,
still some arisings that can be an annoyance, and sometimes they seem like an annoyance. I have a little pushing away to some of the arisings, some of the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that we can label as parts. And there's a noticing like, that annoyance, maybe that's something I can really look at. Like, can the fixing the lawnmower, can that be welcome too? Like, where's the problem? Where's the voice that sees this as a problem? And again, and just for all of us, as Fleming led us to, hey, I don't want to do more. I just want to be here. I want to be here with what's here. Notice reality. When we are here, when I am here, what is here? What do we notice? Is it like resting in a hot tub of beingness and fulfillment of okayness? Is it when I just rest here? Is there peace here? Like, what do you find? What is the rest? What is the being here? As here we are right now, as there Fleming is with his, I don't know if that's a study or a living room with the books behind him, where he's just being here. His brother G is here in his chair, as Jack is here, as Anton and David and Sid. What's the nature of this? What do we find? And then how do you make sense of that in terms of these things that arise, the things you need to do, the fixing the lawnmower? Can there be both? In your system, is there a capacity here to rest in whatever is here, if we call it fundamental well-being, self-being, this okayness, peace? Can that be here along with, maybe a little skeptic, is this the right choice to come to this group today? There's some other things I could be doing. There may be a sense of a to-do list of things you need to do, maybe some discomfort in the body. Can all of that be here? And what's that like? And lastly, how do we make sense of that? Do we often in this work exploration, there are images that arise. It's like maybe that hot tub, the sense that, well, there's a hot tub. I am this rest, this peace. And then the contractions or whatever arises just rests in the hot tub. Or maybe it's like this, noticing what's here. That's more like the space, the emptiness, the air, the galaxy. And what's arising are like planets, constellation of planets, all of these arisings. Any final words, Fleming, on where you, our new sage who's guiding us today? Anything else?
I like it. No, I like where you took this. I mean, what's arising for me is sort of the sense of discernment, but also about sort of not needing discernment. Like it's, if I need to sort of categorize the things that are there for me, and the annoying things like the lawnmower versus just sort of being, and I mean, I'm just this the arising maybe realization that maybe it's not necessary to sort of that one is better than the other. I mean, these are things that are sort of appear. I would rather for the lawnmower to just work by itself, but that's there are gifts in all of it. There's something that comes from it being a little annoying, and then somehow doing something about that.
Good.
So
well, we're gonna follow your lead in that today, and the diving into just what you're describing. We'll follow your lead in diving into that, and just for everyone, as we hear Fleming describe this lastly, the sense of discernment between, or there's a discernment, or maybe in your system there's an understanding that's happening. Oh, I'm understanding that, or it's thinking about it. Can that be what we call a part? Can you be aware of this that is thinking, this that is making sense of, this that's understanding? You know, even this that gets excited about the clarity that Fleming just shared with us. Something that's learning upon. Can that be a part? For me, it's an understanding part that I kind of even feel behind my head. Thank you, Fleming. Brother G, what you got to bring us today? What you got for us?
Well, thinking about what we were just talking about, there's part of me that wants to just sit and, or not even necessarily sit, but just, sink into peacefulness. And then there's the part that wants or needs to be on task. And there's a part of me that's concerned about fulfilling responsibilities and measuring up. And that part draws me into more being on task, and even sometimes hypervigilance to try and catch up and not fall behind.
So that's a lot. Just that you're sharing.
Yeah.
And let me just invite everyone to come along with you with this. As we hear Brother G share what he's aware of, could you find a resonance with each of these? There was one voice I was hearing that I just want to sit, I just want to sink in, I just want to be with what's here, be with the peace that's here. Can we find a voice in ourselves that's like that? Yes, that kind of what Fleming was speaking of as well. Can we find that voice, or the movement, a sensation that's directed in that way? And then Brother G mentioned one of, no, I need to be on task. Need to be on task. What's your version of that? I need to be on task, that voice. And where do you hear it? Where do you hear it? Is it in the head? Is it in front of you, around you, in the body? Or maybe you feel it Where do you find that I need to be on task? As part of this game, I'm just going to digress for a moment, is if we can be aware of 2 or more arisings at the same time. Like, no, I just want to sit and rest. Now we need to be on task. If we can be aware of both of those, and this is why I invite a sense of finding a location or where you hear it. You can be aware of both of those, that it's like a shortcut. Suffering decreases dramatically immediately. And why do I say that? In this game, or this context that I'm sharing, there's a sense that this fundamental well-being is kind of like, it's like the sky that's always here in the background. And the only thing that takes us away from that is when we identify or blend with an arising, like I need to stay on task, if we identify with one. And then to suffer, we really identify with one. And it's like we even become that, right? That, oh, I need to do that. But if you're aware of 2 arisings at the same time, it becomes difficult for that to happen, to blend and identify. And when that doesn't happen, we much more rest as the background. So we've got 2 that Brother G shared, the sense of, I just want to rest. I just want to sink in to what's here, to the peace that's here. Like if we can find that. And then this other one, to stay on task. And I'm just going to include something else he said with that. I need to fulfill my responsibilities, and even a sense of vigilance. We can feel that maybe all as one voice. Stay on task, responsibilities, the vigilance for that. Are we able to be aware of both of these? Sometimes we call this a polarity, this tension. And like, how are you able to be aware of both of them simultaneously? Because often it moves back and forth from one to the other. How are you able to be aware of both of them? What's your way of knowing that? For some of us, it's like a zooming out, like Google Earthing, zooming out, and then we can like see it, like aware of it. For others, it's just being aware of the concurrent sensations in our body. Back to you, Brother G. What else you got for us?
There's a part of me that is protecting from too much vulnerability here and wants to play it safe. And my mind goes blank.
Right. So how about that last one for us? Can we find that? Something that's like, hey, this is a group. I don't know everybody here. Oh my God, he's also got the recording on, which I'll mention in just a minute. It's like, do I really want to say these things?
Yeah.
And it's like, can we find that? Can we find that protective voice, that one that's taking, we see how that's taking care of us, how that's there to take care of Brother G, right? I don't want to be too vulnerable. I don't want to be like sharing too much here. Can we find endearment towards that voice in him, that part? See if we can find endearment for it, about how it's serving and supporting him. And then can we find a resonance in our system for a similar voice that's like, hey, I don't want to say something stupid. I want to, I want to, I want to be careful. I don't want to embarrass myself, whatever that protective voice is. If we can find it, and if we can find endearment towards it in our own systems. All right. Nice. Thank you, Brother G. So before we go and hear from Jack, let's just take a breather for a minute. Like, this is a lot to take in everything Anton just said, and Fleming and Brother G. We haven't even heard from Jack or David yet. Like, I just gotta shake it off. It's like, whoo, here we are. Here we are. It's like Fleming's like, God, I had no idea this is what I was getting into today. And it's like, here we are. And then I'll ask you, just all of us, how are you? How are you? And just notice what's here. How are you? Is there a sense of this black background that Fleming was mentioning, this place of just rest or sinking into, this okayness, this beingness that's here? And then what are the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that come up? How are you? Is there a sense of where are we going? What's this happening? Is this going to be useful? How will that be able to apply this? Is this really going to help heal my system? Is it going to help me sink in more? All of that. If we can hear those voices. And then what are the voices arising in? What are they arising in? And can we find that what they're arising in is perhaps what's being looked for? That the space that they're arising in is perhaps this peace, love, this okayness, this connectedness. Is it possible that this that we love, this that we do POK and finders for is here? That it is here now? And if you're uncertain about that, Jack's going to clarify all of that for us right now. Hey, Jack, what you got?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was really interesting because you said something like, it felt like you said, and the big secret is, and then my screen froze for about, I don't know, it seemed like forever, but a couple seconds. I didn't hear what you said, but that's okay.
Well, let me
It
tell
was
you what
amazing.
I said.
It was so
Yeah,
amazing.
it wasn't
It's
like so amazing,
fantastic.
but when you
Yeah,
said it,
it's totally
The
changed
universe,
everything.
God, the
Yeah.
universe and everything, and you missed
I'm
it.
so
Jack.
happy. But I felt like I already knew it, so I was okay. I know what he's going to say, so that's great. I don't really need to hear it. That was so great.
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
what it Jack, that's what it was. It was a setup for you. It was the preamble. It was the setup. And for the real secret, we're gonna turn it over to Jack. Boom.
yeah, I guess sometimes you talk about a background, right? And it's all background for me. It's all background now. I mean, yeah, the just sense of freedom, eh, like this complete. If I identify, if I identify with or rest as this complete subject, I'll describe the complete subject, complete witness that is nothing, like whole neti practice kind of thing. There's a sense of freedom that brings, okay? But then that is the feeling of that. And Sid, when you talk about these things that have no opposites, I have to remind myself the language gets in the way, and you'll say things, and I think, but that has an opposite. But I don't think you mean the words get in the way, because when you talk about, let's say, like peace, you mean a peace, a capital P peace that's beyond peace and whatever the opposite of peace is. I don't know what your opposite of peace is, random craziness or whatever, you mean something that includes both of those. So yeah, so this sort of freedom that's beyond the small f freedom and whatever else the opposite, and suffering, right? That capital F freedom really feels like I sort of feel like the background's been there all the time, and it's just like the foreground's sort of accepting that and enjoying it, right? And then that coupled with just this non-dual headless, everything's arising where there used to be a separation between a witness and the rest of the world, which really feels like love. So this bliss and love is just like, it's like, I won't say the volume's turned up. It's more like everything is just sort of like, oh wow. All my parts are like, oh
Okay,
wow.
wait, we gotta
How
pause
cool
here,
is that?
Jack. We gotta pause here. Like, how about that, everyone? Everything, bliss and love. Oh wow. And like, if you're like, whoa, that's conceptual, just see if you can tune into Jack. Like, we get to be the vibration. It's like, it's almost
Not.
like a tuning
It's like
fork.
even talking about it is hurting me a little bit because it's so not conceptual. Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to make it conceptual to communicate about it. And that's really a concession. It really is a concession. But hey, we're here, right? You guys might actually not, your eyes might not glaze over. You might get that that's really what's going on. And the other thing that's really helped me that Fleming mentioned is, okay, there's some things you really have to study to get. And there's other things you just have to notice to get, that they're already there. And really the whole idea of seeking is just going to get in the way of it. You know, so I get that. I really connect with that sense of, oh yeah, there's really nothing to seek. It's just all right here. How cool is that? You know, I mean, that to the extent that because they're so different, and you do need the two different ways to look at them, right? You could try to push one on top of the other, or one on top of the other, and they really are very separate ways of like doing so, or not doing something. So I get sometimes you just want to be the part where you're not really, don't have to, when doing things gets in the way almost, you know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, that's sort of, and I can relate to the parts that you tried to get me to relate to. And it's because sort of the witness sees them as objects that it's not attached to. And this like headless, loving space just loves them all so much that those two together, it's just like so nice. Yeah. I feel a little embarrassed, but hey, that's okay. I'll be embarrassed.
Embarrassed.
We can all
relate to that. We can
and everything.
I feel like I'm bragging, but that's not really what I want to try to do. It's just
no, you're just,
You're not bragging.
You're opening the door for where we get to all go together to give
come join me, please. There's no
Yes.
door. It's a gateless. There's not even a door.
So what about that, guys? Because often we have this idea that we have to go there on our own. We have to find this. We got to do this. We got to heal this. We got to find these qualities of beingness. We got to find bliss all on my own and find it's all love. But then as we're here together and we hear Fleming and Brother G speak about what's here, the sinking in, the just being here, we feel it, how it's showing up in them. And then as we hear it in Jack, and maybe perhaps feel it as he talks about this bliss and love, and he speaks from that. The idea that is, for me, it's like a piano, it's like a tone, and we feel it and resonate with it, and it helps me get to know these qualities of perhaps my true nature of fundamental well-being through each of us sharing how it's showing up in us. What about that? What about being so fully present here that as Jack speaks and as David is about to take us with what's going on in his system, and can we find both the fascination with these qualities of fundamental well-being, but also the fascination with the way life is moving, with the sense of, but then there's the lawnmower, then there's whatever that is that needs to be fixed or needs to be done. And if we can feel the little bit of contraction that comes up in that, as Fleming was describing it, we're Jack, and then there's embarrassment. Can we find that? And then what's our relationship with it? As we hear the embarrassment that's in Jack, do we not just have endearment for that and like compassion? It's like, oh, that's so sweet, the embarrassment. We're just touched by it. But then what about like when the embarrassment shows up in us? Similarly, is it something like, oh God, I got to push that away. I got to get away from that. Or can we also find that endearment and love towards the embarrassment that comes in us? And before we go to David, which is just, we got a whole nother place to go here. Before we go to David, two things. Let me just check in again with how are you? and notice the parts that come up. And if there's any sense of comparison that comes up, like that's just a part, or a sense of a spiritual achiever, like bliss, I want bliss. But notice that that's just a part that has this idea that more is better, or that bliss would be better than what's here now, or would add to it. Just to notice that. So how are you? What are your parts that are showing up? And can you be aware of two or more at the same time? And what are they arising in? And as you're with that, I'm supposed to do these disclaimers each time that I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm a mediator. And so this isn't the psychotherapy of IFS. These are friends and colleagues exploring together. Jack's like, what? And if everybody's good with being responsible for their own journeys, if I could get a thumbs up, please. Thank you. And then the second one is that I have a recording on for this, but only my image could ever be shared. Never your image, only my square. However, the audio that you share during this could be shared, because I make this available sometimes to those who can't make it. Sometimes I share this electronically. But with that, if you find you said anything today that you're uncomfortable with, just stay in at the end and tell me, and I can just delete it. And also, lastly, in our work, what we're interested in is the longing of the parts, is what's being longed for, rather than so much of the story. Because what we do is we help our systems find that what they're longing for is actually here in your nature, in your being. And so there's no need to reveal anything that could be uncomfortable. And if you do, just let me know at the end and we'll delete it. If everybody's good with that, if I could get a thumbs up, please. Thank you. Okay. You might be like, gosh, this was a lot. Where are we going next? Well, I've got, it's almost like you go to the movie theater, you get all these previews, and then you got the grand attraction. And here it comes. It's David.
Ta-da! I've had an interesting couple of days of really low lows and then highs of like kisses from universe. And it's it's a commercial for fundamental well-being, I guess. In one level, like I had some intense family stuff come up with my son and my wife, and just like felt like went to bed and woke up in the night just feeling sad and depressed and whatever. And then I got up in the morning and I was over camping on the Oregon coast, and just went down to the beach, and the moon was setting over the ocean. Just sat in my chair and turned on some music, and for a couple hours just like went into music and peace. And like I had some pain in my body from camping, right? All the pain in my body was gone. And it was just like, and I was so thankful, because I'm like, oh man, like I'm here and I'm okay. Like, and like that, all of that darkness sort of passed. I don't know how to explain it exactly. And then on a similar vein, yesterday I met with somebody. I got a new job, and part of it, you get like 8 sessions with a like sort of a counselor, coach, or whatever. So I met with this guy to talk about parenting and marriage issues. And you don't know who you're going to get, and I'm hoping somebody that can help me, right? But I really like the guy. I gelled with him, and he just like really said some things that affirmed me and made me feel like I'm not as, far gone as I feel like I am sometimes. And I just got so like, it just flipped me into almost a GAE in this conversation. And then I popped into Lisa Carrillo's GAE for 15 minutes. The hint of it was just like, so the resilience is getting stronger, I guess. And the getting help from somebody, like it's sort of a crisis mode almost with my son. Like that felt so good to think, oh, I think this guy might actually be able to help me, right? And so just like, yeah, openness and thankfulness, and yeah, there we go.
Nice. So where do we go with that? How do we resonate with what David said? How are we both kind of enjoying him? Because we're getting a sense of, we're getting to enter his world, right? His inner world. If anyone has seen this Inside Out movie, it's just a sense of stepping into his world. and his parts and what's playing inside of him. Like he's like a character. He's sharing himself with us. So there's that. But then also, what if he's speaking to you? What if David sharing that was really just facilitating the five of us? When he said, I'm here and I'm okay. When he said that, in the sense of the lows and the darkness and the weight and the heaviness of all of this and managing the family issues and his son. And then simultaneously there was, I'm here and I'm okay. What's your version of that? That's here now. The I'm here and I'm okay. Doesn't have to be Jack's bliss. It doesn't be, oh, there's bliss here. It could just be, there's presence here. Or like, are you aware? There's awareness here. You can feel the peace of the awareness. What's your version of I'm here and I'm okay? And is it possible that that can be here in the midst of the storm? And as David described these lows and all that's going on, did you see that as a problem? As David was describing that, was that a problem? He needs to, wow, hopefully this counselor will really be able to help him because he needs to work through that. Like, did you have any narrators that said there was a problem that needs to be fixed? Or was it more of, could you find a fascination with what was arising in him? Wow, there's this devoted parent that will do anything for his son and that's feeling the weight of his son's difficulties. And it's like, could find that there was an interest and fascination in what was arising in him, or was a voice of kind of a healer or spiritual achiever? Did that kind of take over? Was it more about how do we fix this? And so in your own system, when the lows are there, when the difficulties are there, when the pains in the body are there, what are we aware of? Just as Fleming was saying, just to be here now, I'm just here now. What are we aware? Are we aware of those lows? Is there a sense of how they're welcomed here? Or is it more a sense we hear the parts that come up and say, this is a problem, we need to fix this, we need to change it? We're going to do a dive in just a minute to kind of explore all of this together for like 10 minutes. But David, what else you want to do to package all this together, to bring it together?
Well, one thing that's interesting about yesterday is, I'm filling out these little assessments ahead of the session, and there, there are some standard like depression, anxiety, sort of standardized question stuff that I've done before, through 45 days and through this other thing that I did. And I wasn't really concerned about like, can this guy help me like feel better? I was just like, can he make a measurable difference in our relationship and my son's life and my marriage or whatever? Like, I was like, I got like feeling better covered, like because of this, right? And this community. So I was like, wow, like, because I think I just want to go there and feel better, right? But I was like, no, that's secondary. I I just want to like have real results for my family, and then of course that would make me feel better. But I was like, what? Really? I don't care about feeling better. That's not my priority. So that was just a curious observation that I was surprised about.
About that. Like the here I am and I'm okay can be here. It can be the sense of okayness, even in the midst of problem solving. Like how about that in each of our systems where there's a problem of the lawnmower, or I want to help my son, and that we can, if there's that here I am and everything's okay and I'm okay, like as David's describing, he went into that counseling session from this place, the gift of perhaps POK, fundamental well-being, or all this work David has done to know this. And there wasn't in the sense of, God, I'm hoping I will get relief from this. Relief was already here. There was already okayness. Did I get that all right? How did I do, David? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to take a dive in a minute, and part of it is, how do we bring this all together in these different views? Just like what Jack was saying, there's not a foreground and background for him. There's not a foreground for background. Everything is this. And there was a usefulness in the neti, and everything is this. Like, we hear that. And sometimes we hear it in our radical non-duality friends and Sequoia's groups and things on POK. There's just this. And that's just a particular view. That's one view. And then we have other views that we make sense of. David's, the sense of being in this okayness, and then whatever contraction is here, whatever difficulties that get to find resolution. Like, there's a welcoming of our parts. And then for some of us, it's just a discernment. It's just like Fleming's like, I just want to rest here. So it's just a discerning that self peace is here, I'm okay is here, and just being able to rest. So we're going to explore that in like a 5-10 minute thing. But before we do, anything that's bubbling that's wanting to be shared? This has been like so much in the 40 minutes we've been together.
Like for me, it sort of strikes me, or I changed my perspective a little bit. I mean, there are these different parts, and they're sort of interacting with each other. Like, there's thing one needs to do, or that requires attention, or that's a little bit of a crisis. But there's also like a counselor, or somebody will help. There are moments when camping or listening to me. I'm referencing David's stuff here, but that there's something else that will sort of help and will interact with it. So it's not so much, do I need to fix all of this? It's more like, well, there's this and there's other thing that's sort of interacts, and they're there, and there's already sort of a thing playing out, maybe sort of partially automatically, one could say. So I'm feeling a little more of a sense of the background of, okay, that's fine, that's needed. There's a problem there, but there's, or something that needs attention, but there's help over there, and there's rest over there, and it's all sort of there, which makes it less of a problem.
Nice, Fleming. Less of a problem. Anything else bubbling before we take a little 10-minute dive together? All right, then let's see what's here. How are you? And if it helps to close your eyes, you're welcome to, as we explore you. How are you? Living was describing lots of things here, risings, and perhaps the I'm here and I'm okay. How are you? What's here now? And then in this Effortless IFS, we have 3 views that we're going to go through pretty quickly here with the how are you. And the first one is called riding the bike of being. And this is where my invitation is just to sink in to the beingness, to the background, to what is. Just sink in to the peace that's here. And it's almost having a loving indifference towards the foreground, towards the parts, towards anything that arises. The only interest here is just sinking in to the fundamental well-being, to the okayness. What flavor is here for you? Is it peace? Is it stillness? Emptiness? Warmth? Softness? Connectedness? Flow? Or Jack's words, love? Bliss? Or David's, I'm okay? What's here? And how do you know it's here? How do you know that this peace, this okayness is here? How do you know it? Is the breath different? The muscles, experience of the body? The experience of others, the experience of the space you're in is different. How do you know it's here? Okay, so from here, this is the first view. As we rest, as we abide here, can go to a second view. And this is from this space, resting as this peace, this love, this okayness, this stillness. And so being aware of that which arises, the thoughts, feelings, and sensations, a sense of maybe those are in the foreground. We're aware of them. And notice that this beingness has no resistance there. It's just an openness. You are an openness. You are a welcoming. You are an acceptance of what is. So the second one I call, let's call it the infinite hot tub. Like you are this infinite hot tub, this warm, loving hot tub, and everything that arises in you and just soaks in you. Any wanting, oh, I need to do this, oh, I need to do that, I need to take care of my family. I'm embarrassed, this is uncomfortable. I need to figure this out. All of those, they get to soak in what they're arising in. Everything that arises is arising in this background, this beingness, and they're soaking in that. Or for sometimes we think of it as like the Rumi's guest house poem that just welcomes everything, all the guests. Like all your guests are welcomed here. And notice there's nothing you have to do for this to happen. As you're aware of what's arising, ideally you can be aware of a couple at the same time. Maybe it's like a field, a space, a constellation of planets. As you're aware of all of those, they arise within this beingness, within your nature. And this is where a lot of the healing occurs, because there's nothing you have to do. They're just in the hot tub, or they're being welcomed home by this love, this welcoming that you are. And notice sometimes it might blend with a thought, oh, this is hard, I'm not doing this right, I should be doing this differently, or this isn't really applicable or helpful for me. Notice that, and then can you zoom out again? Can you go out where you can be aware of that? And as you're aware of that, notice that everything is arising in this self, in this beingness. And then from here, we're going to go into Jack land. We're going to go where Jack was pointing to. From here, as we notice these that are arising, can we find that there's an intimacy with what's arising inside of you, with these parts, that there's an intimacy with them. Perhaps there's a love, whatever this intimacy might be, love, it might be connectedness. And in this intimacy with what arises, can you find that they're not really completely separate. They're not completely separate objects of awareness. This, I need to do the lawnmower, or I'm gonna want to help my son, or my body hurts. That there's an intimacy with what's arising. And in that intimacy, can you find that that this beingness even pervades into the contraction itself, into the parts, into the wants? That they're not separate from this beingness. As Jack was saying, there's just everything is of this bliss, of this love. See if you can taste that. And it doesn't need to be the big bliss word of Jack's. It could just be there a presence, or there's aliveness here, there's awareness here, there's beingness here, there's stillness here in the parts themselves. And then lastly, in this third view, sometimes it all goes into oneness. There's just this beingness. There's just this love. Everything is this. And sometimes we fall into that. They call that the fourth location. Some people call it that, where everything is of the kind of the sameness of this. You might notice that. And then it even gets more subtle. can you find the simultaneity of everything that arises is of this, nothing is separate, and then there's still a distinction of life that's moving, as the fixing the mower, as the what am I doing next, as what David was pointing to. All this can happen, but it's almost like there's no longer a resistance or contraction in it. Like there's this simultaneity of this aliveness, this almost this personalness of the me moving in time, and then there's this timelessness of everything is of this beingness. Okay, so gently, when you're ready, we can allow your eyes to open, but you don't need to look or do anything. You just let the light come in. It's like, here we are. Let me see if we can just stay where we are and what was found. Maybe an enjoyment of how this all is moving inside each of us. At the same time, that was a lot. You can let it all just kind of shake off too. There's nothing that needs to be held on to, nothing that needs to be understand, there's no progression necessary here. We're just playing together. We're just playing. We're just playing. 6 guys hanging out, playing on the playground. And then in a moment, we'll go around and hear from each of us as far as what you found, or what's interesting for you, or what you'd like to share about what's here and what you found. And David, are you leaving in the hour for us today, or?
No, I'm here for the full meal deal.
Full meal deal. All right. Well, we'll just we'll see. Does anyone want to go first? Anyone want to go to first?
I'll go first. So for me, it gives me a sort of a loving care for these various things.
Fleming, can we pause just for just a minute, just because I just saw Anton just wrote a message that he's leaving in 5 minutes. Would it be all right if we don't want to miss what's there for him if we go to him and then back to you? Is that cool? Anton, good. We got 5 minutes of you. Tell us how it's got. How's this going for you?
So actually, while you were talking, I felt this, like spaciousness and deep peace, and there was some arisings. Really, something happened, and I noticed my attention actually kind of contracting around something in a way, if it's the right way to discuss, and then letting go. It's like exploratory quantity, like something is coming around, something contractions and goes away and stuff like that. So, and now I'm really peaceful, and yeah, I'm in a really good mood. Thank you.
And isn't interesting? It's like, wow, there's this spaciousness, this deep peace, and then the attention or something contracts. What about that? Can they both be here? Like, can there be a spaciousness simultaneously with a contraction around an arising? How does your system make sense of that, Anton?
Well, it's really hard to rationalize on here. It's just, I don't know. It feels as like for some reason at certain moment. Oh, it's so hard to describe. So basically, at some point, for some reason, the breadth of the attention is lost, and it's focused in a way, and it loses perspective. So that's how it feels, and still on the background there is something else, like bigger, and I don't know who or which of those I am. It's like, I don't know.
There it is. Like, let's say Anton is facilitating all of us in what he just described. How does that play what he was describing? The sense of, wow, there's just this breadth of attention. this breath that's here. And then something happens where it just kind of contracts and narrows. But he says at the same time, even when that's happening, there's still something bigger back here. And then there's a little bit of confusion in like, where am I identifying in the midst of this? Or it's like almost like, how are you in the midst of that? How are you? Am I the contraction, or am I this okayness, this bigness in the back? Or am I both? How are you in the midst of it? And how does that play for each of us? What Anton's describing as something arises, I need to take care of the family, the lawnmower, got things I need to do. Any final words, Anton?
I just wanted to say thank you, and this is great. Yeah, I see you next time, I guess.
Wonderful. Nice to be with you.
Thank you.
All right, so we just keep on rocking and rolling. We get to go to Fleming and see where he's going to. Where are you going to take us, Fleming?
Well, I sort of tracked along with you, I think, or well, I felt this sort of loving care for first sort of being aware of people around me in my life, or they have their different sort of little or whatever problems. They have their different contractions and things they're sort of focusing on and trying to work out, and sort of this sense of they're there in space, sort of parts of the world, and feeling a sort of loving care for that's yeah, that's what they're doing. And that's not, even though some of it might be problems, it's just well, that's just what's going on for them. And then moving on to doing that also for like myself. There are things that requires attention and so forth, and having a sense of, well, that's just sort of things going on, and that's okay. That's not just even not a problem. It's sort of, that's sort of what life is made of. I mean, some contractions in order to then evolve into other things, or to learn something, or to stay busy, or whatever. And so I felt sort of sinking in quite well in sort of a background, just sort of loving care for everything. At the same time, I noticed a little bit of maybe hesitation to like, can I really do that, or can I stay here? Is that okay? Do I need to do anything, or is it really okay to sort of stay in just loving background care for everything, including my own life? And so just this hesitation that like arose there. I noticed that.
Let me check.
Yeah.
Let me pause for just a minute with us, just for everyone, with this. It's of Fleming's describing his background, this beingness, as loving care. He's describing loving care, or maybe you can feel the resonance from him of loving care. What's most like that in each of us? Loving care. And for loving care to be here, is there anything at all you have to do? Or is it more like Fleming and Brother G were speaking of just noticing what's here? It's just here, resting in what's here. If we rest here, do we find that? Do we find loving care? Is there anything you have to do? Notice maybe you have some parts. Oh, I can find loving care. I can help find that, or I can help myself stay there. And is there anything needed to be there as we join Fleming in this journey? Please continue.
And I mean, it feels nice, and sort of tentatively, I can sort of increase the intimacy level of that, of not just being okay with that there are these different contractions, but willingness to like really be there with them, both for myself and others, and that I felt a little more tentative with, but a sense that that's okay too. It's that there's no problem. But maybe as I mentioned, there was this sort of one part that's sort of arising of, well, is that a hesitation kind of thing? Is that okay? Should I really think about this? Can I just sort of abandon myself to this, or should I think about it some more? So that's another part too. Nice. But I mean, I was less sure I could just treat that the same as everything else. But
so how about that?
Feels good.
How about that for all this hesitation part that Fleming has? Like, can I just rest here? Is this loving care? Is that okay? And just kind of welcome everything that arises? Or do we have a part that comes up that says, no, there's something else that needs to be done, or that's not going to work? Or maybe, hey, maybe that works when we're in workshops, but like real life, is that going to work? And is that just the hesitation part? First off, to hear it and welcome it and like the wisdom of it, not to just, oh, it's just a part. It's like the wisdom of that, like totally be welcoming that. And at the same time, to notice that it is a voice that's arising. What's your version of the hesitation part? Is it a sense of it like a skeptic? A concern about, yeah, but like, what about when I'm really in conflict or difficulty or stress? What's your version of the hesitation part? And is it okay that the hesitation part is there? That resistance, that uncertainty, that skepticism is there? Can that be welcomed as well? Final thoughts, Fleming?
It's good. I feel already I'm welcoming my skeptical part a little bit more. Like it's a kind of wisdom that maybe is nice to have as sort of a second opinion one way or another. So I feel a little warmer towards that.
Nice. And when we hear our skeptical part, as we hear our hesitant part, if we listen closely, do we find there's another voice that shows up in our system? Maybe saying that skeptic is a problem, that the skeptic shouldn't be here, or something should be different, or I should be addressing the skeptic differently. I shouldn't let it have so much attention. Do we notice that there's any resistance to it? And if so, can that be welcomed as well? And the loving care, just welcome everything that's arising. And then lastly, if that skeptic wants to be in the spotlight in your system, if it wants to be the loudest part, if it wants to be like, yeah, this spiritual stuff, this fundamental well-being, or this IFS, that's just a bunch of silliness. There's real life. Is it okay that it's here? Can that be welcome? Can it be in the spotlight? Can it seem like it's driving the car? Can that be welcomed and included? And notice if it can't, what is it that's resisting it? All right, that was a lot, everybody. Fleming just took us on quite a place. Woo, woo, woo. Ah. And again, in the midst of this, because we got a lot more in this next 27 minutes with Brother G, David, and Jack. In the midst of all of this that we're doing, is it possible that there's nothing that needs to be done? That everything is okay just the way it is? Sometimes they call it the pathless path. Or in Dzogchen, they'll call it the great perfection, the great completeness, that we already are that. But truly, everything is okay, just like where David was taking us, with everything just the way it is. Notice it takes the pressure off, right? It takes any of the urgency, the pressure, the stress. If we can taste that in the midst of this before we go to whoever wants to go next. So let me just ask us all, how are you? How are you? Just notice what's here. And if there is some stress, some contraction, just to notice that. And is it okay that that's here? And who wants to go next?
I can go. I'd like to start by saying that I recently may have received at least a preliminary attention deficit diagnosis, and so I'm kind of watching my attention come in and out through using that lens, I guess, which I is kind of new for me.
So what about that,
And
Brother
then,
G?
yeah,
What about
sure.
that? I might have just got a diagnosis for attention deficit disorder, the sense of things are popping around perhaps with that. And it's like, first off, as we all hear that, can we find that, what's your version of attention deficit disorder in each of our systems? What's your version of it? And can you find an interestingness with it? Like almost like there's a theater of Brother G, of Sid, of David, of Fleming, of Jack. And it's like, wow, there's a little bit of how's ADHD playing in your theater as you see your parts, maybe like actors on stage, the theater, the drama. Where's the ADHD? I can absolutely find it here. So back to you, Brother G.
Sure. And then referencing what we've been talking about earlier about being here and being on task. In the middle of the meditation, I remembered something that I wanted to take care of on my iPad that had a time limit on it. So I shut off my camera and took care of that, and then came back. And maybe that's all I have to say for now. It's just I'm watching different sensations come up in my body. Just letting it all pass through.
As we hear Brother G describe this, if he's facilitating us, just noticing what's here and it's just kind of all passing through. And then he noticed a part that came up. It's like a reminder. Hey, wait a minute. You have something that you have to do. There's a time limit. You need to go do that.
Yeah.
We all can relate to that, right? Parts that are like helping us. They're our to-do lists. And in the midst of all of this, Brother G, there's a non-dual guy that Jack and I like named Locke Kelly. And he uses this line. He says, is there a problem that needs to be solved? And in the midst of all of this that you're noticing and that you're describing, it just for all of us, in the midst of everything that's here right now, in the midst of how are you, is there a problem that needs to be solved? Any final thoughts, Brother G?
And another way he says that is, what is here now if there's no problem to solve? Locke Kelly, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's much better that way. I like it better that way.
And then Sailor Bob has a book that's called What's Wrong with Right Now If You Don't Think About It, or something like that. Without a thought, something like that. Final thoughts. Grateful to be here. I'm doing a little bit of, I guess, I don't know if it's called regular IFS, just IFS with a therapist. And that's what brought me back in, was just seeing parts of the effortless parts too.
You're doing effortful IFS. Exertion IFS.
I like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Brother G. Thank you, brother G. Hey, David, will you say that one more time for all of us? The
Locke
proper
Kelly
way that
quote?
Locke says it. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know if you were saying a different quote from Locke Kelly or if you're completely messing up the one I was thinking of. So anyway, what is here now? It's like, wow, that's, if he's trying to say this, that's really off. What is here now if there's no problem to solve?
Nice.
And then all this weight just comes off and it's like, oh, holy shit.
A slightly different flavor is, what would it be like if there was no problem to solve?
Mhm.
What would things be like if there's no problem to solve? Which you can sort of weigh what it feels like to have a problem and what it doesn't feel like to be a problem. If you sort of think of it that way, you can compare the two. It's interesting sort of transition for me. Yeah, but let's say, that's what, it's a beautiful, I love it.
Isn't that, it's fascinating how just these little changes in a couple of words like can open you up. Like I like the one I said, but then when you said that, it's like, another angle, and just kind of, it's so beautiful how words can help us with wordless experience and understanding. That's one of the divine mysteries. Like Jeffrey's whole thing is you gotta get into practices until you find one that opens you up into completely nonverbal, wordless experience of the real. And then you're gonna talk about it. Or you're gonna go on a GAE and say words to express what it's like to experience the completely ineffable, ground of all being and spacious love of the universe. It's that simultaneity again. It's so ridiculous that words could do anything to get you there, right? But they play a role.
Jack, David, who wants to keep rolling with this and share anything that's going on or anything like to say about what's here?
I guess I'll keep rolling. The other thing that came up in that experience the other morning and yesterday was this benevolent, like, love and presence, like a friend or a grandfather or something, like, and that it was always there. Like it was here inside of me. It wasn't something from outside of me, kind of a reality, and it's gonna be okay. And even like my, relational challenges, my marriage, like sometimes it feels really hopeless. I don't know if it's going to change or she's going to change or whatever. But like this morning, I'm like, it's okay. I'm here. And yeah, it's a really powerful sort of distinction, realization, or acceptance or something.
What about that, David? Just like maybe putting a little box around that for a moment. This benevolent presence, it's okay in the midst of something that can appear really difficult, the circumstances in our life. And just in using David's example of, we all know this in relationship, right? We all know this in relationship, the difficulties. And then, and then we know sometimes it gets really, really difficult in relationship. In the midst of that, to be able to know this, it's okayness. What's that like, David, when it's touched?
Well, part of what I experienced a minute ago, I just remembered, was that it's not just that I'm accepting that it's okay and it's kind of this sort of psychological state of fundamental well-being or whatever, but like that it's actually going to be okay. that actually, like, God, presence, universe, benevolence is here with me, knows what's happening and where it's going, and it's actually going to be okay. Things can actually be like restored and better in relationships, and yeah.
Let me ask you this: is it okay? Can you find in this benevolent presence? Can you find okayness in the midst of our partner just yelling at us, and we have having thoughts that, God, I really hope this gets better and changes. In the midst of that, can we still taste it's okay, a place of okayness that we call causeless okayness often? Like what about that?
Can I experience it in the moment when she's yelling? Or is that the question?
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay right now. In a particular moment where she was yelling 2 days ago, I felt, all kinds of things in my body. My body felt tense and nervous and
Yes.
hard to breathe and like, you know, adrenaline. And so, yeah, it wasn't until later that, I mean, I tried to breathe and calm myself
How
down,
about
but
that?
it,
How about that? In the midst of the body's tense and nervous and hard to breathe, we all know this, right? It might be a partner, it might be a car accident, whatever it is. In the midst of that, those moments, is it still something? It was Anton was describing, like still somewhere in the background, there was still this peace or okayness there. And it's like in the midst of that, David, in the midst of that for all of us, is it still here? Is self here, still here? Is beingness still here? Is okayness still here somewhere? And how do we touch it? How do we get just a little taste of, wow, there's presence here, there's awareness here? How do you, what shows up first for you, David? Or maybe when things relax a little bit, what's the first flavor of beingness, of okayness that shows up?
yeah, I don't know if I could feel like presence or peace in that moment, but then we got back from where we were driving. I went down to the beach and just breathed, and I was able to get back into it way faster than I would have in the past. And then at that point, I can realize that it was always already there, right? So,
Mm.
yeah, and that since there's an aspect of timelessness when you're getting into this deep place of, spacious, substantive peace or whatever, you can just enter into that and take it back to that car drive where your wife was yelling at you. Like Jeffrey did this really great New Year's Eve meditation like 2 or 3 years ago, and you got into this place of deep peace, and then you took it into your past and all the like hard places in your past and like applied it retroactively to your life or preactively, I don't know. And then you applied it to your like your parents and grandparents and like through generations. It was a really cool thing. So the thought that like you can get into timeless and go back and heal what happened. Like I can go back and heal what happened 2 days ago when my body felt very intense. That's kind of cool, right? That's a great application of timelessness, right? So
Thank you. Thank you, David. How's that for all of us before we go to Jack? How's that for all what David just shared? How's that for all of us? Anything bubbling? Any comments before we go to our finale and Jack?
how to practically use timelessness in time and other koans. My book title.
And so what about the sense of the concurrence of timelessness and time? That's where it goes here. Anything
You
else?
froze for me over the last 10 seconds before you said where it goes here.
I think that was
Would
it.
you be willing to go
Just
back in time a little bit and repeat?
it's back in time. Just the sense of the relationship between timelessness and time. David's just kind of opening that window for us. What's the relationship for that in that for all of us? And that even that word timelessness, do we know that? How do you know that? Where do you find that? Anything maybe why don't we just go right to Jack with all this, because then we'll take a moment and see if anything's bubbling.
Oh,
in any of
where
us
I
as we
go with
close.
that, where I go with that is, well, from a from an understanding standpoint, I sort of look at the difference between the standing present and the passing present. If you guys know, that's a sort of a Christian mystic sort of idea that there's the standing present, the eternal present that's outside of time, right? That's always, you're always in that, right? And then there's the passing present, which is sandwiched between the past and the future, like a slice of bologna in a sandwich, that is passing through this standing eternal present. That if I don't get those two confused, or I at least see that the passing present is in a sense flowing through this eternal presence, right? And I can sort of realize I'm always in this eternal presence. There's no, it's one of those things where, yeah, oh wow, it's always been there, you know, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's always been there, sort of. That's what helps me sort of, first of all, realizing which one I'm trapped in or which one I'm resting in, however you want to look at it, is really important for me for that. Yeah, so thanks for that. That's a great way to get to a really blissful state. You can rest in the eternal present, right? Never born, never died. Yeah.
I'm curious for all of us, as we hear Jack say this is eternal presence, it's eternal present. Is that here? Is it here now? Is the eternal present here now? Do you know that? And if so, how do you know that? What's the flavor of it? How do you know that it's here? The eternal present, and then these are new words to me, and then the passing present. Are both of those here? And is it discombobulating? Is it really confusing to like both? Well, how can both of those be here? But are both of those here?
Yeah, one's changing all the time. The other one is completely unchanging all the time. Yeah. It's a way to think about it anyway. It helps me to think of it. But
right.
yeah, you said something. Loving indifference is what you said. And then people went off into this loving caring, which doesn't, we're going to get relative here. It don't sound like the same thing, but yeah, it's a loving that's beyond loving or indifferent, right? It's that capital S sort of loving that's beyond a small L love or a small I indifference, right? But it gets back to the bliss. It's more like loving. I would describe it more like resting as pure awareness, that awareness somehow feels separate from what's arising, therefore I'm free of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But resting as a headless, there's no subject object, sort of everything's arising where my head used to be. That includes that blissful freedom. So it's like a loving freedom versus a loving indifference for me, would be a better description. You did say loving indifference, right?
I did, but that wasn't the Jack view. The Jack view was the third view. The loving indifference.
Well, I was trying to understand what you meant by loving indifference. I was trying to understand what you meant by loving indifference. Were you trying to get us to hold two polarities, or what were you? Where were you going? Where were you taking?
What is that? The loving indifference is more like what you just said, like the resting as pure awareness and being aware of, and it's like a separation. It's like the parts are separate, and there's the loving indifference towards the parts is like we're not really going there. We're not putting attention.
You're not blending. It's like a loving unblending, maybe a loving unblending, maybe IFS terms. Yeah.
That and our attention, our only interest is in the sinking in to self and to beingness. When I use that word. The loving indifference, because you're taking this completely different place where you go, which is just be that the headlessness where everything is of this, everything's bliss. is what I'm hearing, a very different place.
Well, it's everything is love, and bliss is a part of it. It's a part of that, but it's a sort of, yeah. The combination of the two is sort of the background, which, yeah, the background hot tub sort of.
Yeah.
Riding the bike of love and bliss is, pretty, you feel like more you're floating on it than really riding a bike. Like the magic carpet of love and bliss.
How about all that just for all of
I'd be
us?
afraid. I'd fall off of the magic carpet. There's a part of me that, what magic? I'm going to fall off today. I'm sorry.
I was going to just for all of us, the magic carpet of love and bliss. Everything is of love and its experience is bliss. Like, do we taste that? Can we taste it? What's our flavor of it? Or maybe we don't. Magic carpet, I don't go there. It's more, it's different. It's all the ocean.
I'd like to increase the size of my magic carpet so that I won't fall off.
Yeah, with a fence, right? With a parachute on my back. And
We've got a couple minutes left. Anything for coming up for everybody with what Jack's sharing or final words, and then come back to Jack for a final word on this.
Well, one last thing. I've been really embracing ADHD. Not so much for this physical system, but for my people in my family. Yeah. And just really how well they do, even with it. It's amazing. How, it's just how, like, if they realize they got it and they're willing to work with it, it's just another part, right, that they're working with. In a sense, I've just been, yeah.
I always want to be careful with that. One thing I love about IFS, classic IFS, is they call it non-pathologizing. Like nothing is wrong. And as we talk about ADHD, can we see it as David was leading us to, like, what's here when there's no problem to be solved? It's not a problem to be solved. It's something to be welcomed, appreciated, enjoyed. As Jack is doing with his family, as he's appreciating it and welcoming it.
There was parts of me that really resisted doing that, by the way. Just I'll mention that. It wasn't like an immediate thing. It was more like okay, this is a good place to look, Jack. There's lots of juice here for sure.
Any final words, guys? We got like 2 minutes left. Anything coming up that we're wanting to speak?
I really love that distinction that Jack mentioned about the Christian mystics and eternal moment of the present or whatever, and then the bologna slice. Like, that's a really helpful distinction. And yeah, that's a very precise description of that makes it easier to enter into both of those things simultaneously. Because sometimes you're like, one of them or the other one is incomplete, but yeah, they're both true, and that's really helpful. Is there a particular Christian mystic that's from, Jack?
Nox, I think I bet on my Latin terms, Nox fluens and Nox stans, I think, are the two terms they use. And I think no particular Christian mystic comes up. I'm not that good on my Christian mystic, sorry. Right. Nox fluens and Nox stans, I think, is the Latin terms that they use to make it seem more mystical. I don't know why I use a Latin term, but
Latin in there.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure being with you today. Just in closing, just to notice how where we went, it was all like originally the six of us and what was arising, and we went, and each of us kind of led and through our systems, through sharing what was here. And so it was an experience of almost a celebration of you, a celebration of what was arising in you. through your sharing, that's where we went. We went to the depths of today. So it was a pleasure being with you, and come back again. See you later, everybody.